If you're like most people who venture out in public, you often take some time to look presentable. Depending on what you're doing and where you're going, you might shower, assemble a suitable outfit, and apply a fragrance. Indeed, you wouldn't want to arrive for a job interview in your pajamas, but even for less formal events, like hanging out with friends, you should still look and smell fresh. While your physical appearance is one component, your behavior, or how you act, is another component. With many people, we typically find that there are ostensibly two different sides to them, their public and private side. When at home, or with a small group of friends, individuals tend to become more comfortable and restrain themselves to a lesser degree compared to when they're at work and around strangers. Not everyone, but this pattern is frequent enough to be noticeable. With this phenomenon being rather obvious, it begs the question, should you have a public versus private persona, and to what extent should they differ from each other? Today's discussion will explore this question along with the possible implications for your private and public interactions. Fundamentally, each person has a set of core values, and irrespective of how you construct your public versus private image, you should seek to preserve these core values, rather than compromise them. In other words, be authentic to yourself and others. To begin, should you have a public versus private persona? Yes, because it's necessary to possess a public persona that differs from your private one. Before I proceed further, I should define public and private. I define public as any space where interactions with acquaintances and strangers can feasibly occur, or you and your actions are somehow visible to them. This also includes your home if you're hosting these people, like a party for example. Meanwhile, I define private as any space where you're more likely to interact with just your family or close friends, where interactions with strangers and acquaintances are less likely to occur, and also where your actions are largely concealed from the outside world. The most obvious private space is your home, where you can relax and let your guard down. A vital difference to remember is that the public realm is more visible, whereas the private is less visible. Regarding work, anyone who has a job that necessitates customer service already realizes this inherent truth. When dealing with clients, you must look and act professional. This entails watching what you say and ensuring that your body language is appropriate for the situation. Indeed, when I interact with patrons at my workplace, I have to appear friendlier, smile more often, and use my words carefully as I manage complaints. This task becomes arduous when I'm tired because I tend to be less proactive in my interactions and I revert to the fundamentals of my job, while ignoring the additional dimensions. If a patron complains about something early in the morning, a thought I tend to have is, "It's too early for this." Good thing I can maintain a solid poker face and keep it to myself. Otherwise there would be more trouble. At work, I realize that I've constructed a persona, but it's alright because this side doesn't differ from my usual polite and relaxed disposition. Nevertheless, I'm more reserved in public than in private, a trait that numerous others evidently possess. Ultimately, my core values aren't compromised by this, and it'll become an issue if I have to construct a persona for work that contradicts my core principles, or be forced to continuously engage with people I'd rather avoid. Anyhow, work is one area where constructing a public image becomes readily apparent. But what are other situations where this becomes necessary? Well, pretty much every time you venture out into the public sphere, whether that's going shopping, exercising, traveling, attending large events, or smaller get-togethers, all of these actions are encapsulated by the public sphere. These are a few examples of many, but you get the picture. Ultimately, you must present yourself in a manner that doesn't cause others to avoid you. Perhaps you don't care one iota about what other people think, and so be it. However, it's certainly in your best interest to present yourself well. Refraining from unnecessarily swearing, losing your temper, and engaging in obscene or disrespectful behavior is a good place to start if you wish to have other people tolerate your presence. In other words, you may not care what other people think, but you have to act in a particular way if you wish to keep others around you. This is valid no matter where you go and whatever you do. I don't know about you, but I certainly don't want to become alienated from everyone I come across, especially by the people I care about. It must be acknowledged, though, that sometimes this occurs because you're simply trying to engage with the wrong people, and no matter what you do, they ignore your presence. Something I've experienced firsthand, but on other occasions there are actions and behaviors of yours that directly cause others to avoid you. Take care that you correct them to the best of your ability, so others will not only tolerate your presence, but will actively seek it instead. By now you understand what I'm getting at. An individual should act, dare I say, more respectable and refined in the public sphere. But how far should this concept go? We evidently comprehend that someone can act differently with family and close friends than complete strangers. But how different should your public image be compared to your private one? Fundamentally, the two personas shouldn't drastically diverge when it pertains to your core values. You shouldn't compromise your central beliefs when crafting a public persona, and you shouldn't go along with a delusion that compromises who you are. This is easier said than done though, as some conformity is necessitated in the public sphere. However, in the same vein, there's also sufficient room for expression, and that expression is direly needed. Otherwise, individuals wouldn't be distinct at all, and we'd act like cogs in some grandiose machine. Ultimately, there may be different sides to each person, but their core identity is the same. For example, if you value honesty, then you should present yourself with integrity in both your public and private interactions. If you seek to be respectful, then you should also uphold this value in every interaction. You might object and say, well, aren't there occasions where a person can present ostensibly paradoxical behavior, like when they are carefree in some circumstances and serious in others? So there shouldn't be a hard and fast dichotomy where specific behaviors are mutually exclusive. Indeed, this is acknowledged as people can simultaneously be strict at work and laid back in their private lives. This isn't contradictory and is completely acceptable. My overall point here is that your behavior cannot be the same in every situation. You must adapt and use your discernment to act in a manner that's tailored to the uniqueness of circumstances. Despite this fact, what you cannot allow yourself to fall victim to is crafting a public persona that contradicts your fundamental ethics. You may act differently in public, but this doesn't suggest that you should morph into the opposite of who you are. This commonly occurs when people try to impress others or act in a manner that will obtain their attention and approval. I performed these actions when I wanted to fit in back in middle school, and what was the result? I didn't fit in at all, but rather I was disrespected and ultimately alienated by those whom I tried to impress. Why? Because I compromised my core values and who I truly was. When I decided to stick to who I wanted to become and what I valued, that was when the respect and attention came around. However, by then I didn't care about those people anymore because I maintained my core values and focused instead on those who truly appreciated me. I advise you to do the same. Protect your fundamental principles wherever you go, and the people who truly appreciate you will come around. Not only that, they'll also remain by your side when circumstances aren't as favorable. To conclude, presenting a more refined version of yourself in public is inevitable, but going against your principal beliefs doesn't have to be. When deciding how you should act, you must ask yourself these questions. Does it conform with my values, and am I being authentic? If the answer is no to both questions, then perhaps you should reconsider. It's undoubtedly easy to become inauthentic, lost in the delusions, and go along with the crowd. Preserving your identity and what you stand for is incredibly arduous in today's climate, but it can be achieved if you're willing to try. Finally, be wise about how you present yourself, because one day you might look into the mirror and see a complete stranger staring back.